like anything like that. So. Okay, good afternoon and welcome to A Conversation With. I am your host, Isabella Santini, and with me today is Mr. Ra, the assistant principal of High Tech High School. Behind the glass is our fellow producers. We welcome Mr. Ra into the studio today to talk about High Tech High School and its acceptance with incoming 8th graders into the school and different things like that. So, Mr. Ra, how are you today? Welcome.
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me.
Of course, we're very happy.
I haven't done one of these in a while, so
Yes.
I'm glad to be here. I don't have anything coming through on my headset, though,
I
so I don't know if that matters or not. But
I don't either, so I think we're okay, so we're just going to continue.
Okay.
But yes, so if you don't mind talking to the viewers about exactly what your position is at High Tech High School regarding acceptance rates and just what your position is overall.
So my position is assistant principal. I've been with the district probably 21 or 22 years. I started in 2003. I used to sub at night with the adult high school. I did about 5 years of teaching with CAS Prep, which I don't know if you're familiar with CAS Prep or not, but it was the alternative program at that time. So if you were 2 years behind in your educational plan, so you were a 16-year-old freshman, you missed school, whatever the reason was, we had a program. It was after the high tech kids would leave, the program would start at 3:00. And so I was part of that program teaching for about 5 years. I taught science. And then I became an administrator, I think in 2009, and worked as an administrator for CAS Prep for a few years. And then once that program was kind of downsized, we started moving staff to high tech. So I think I started with high tech around 2012. At that time, Ms. Crone was also a vice principal. She went on to be the principal of Explore and then our director of student support services. So a lot of the admissions, she was sort of the lead person on admissions for a number of years. But we worked together as assistant principals. And then when she moved on, myself, Dr. Giamarella, the supervisors, the CTE teachers, we all kind of adopted the admissions role and responsibility. And so we sort of became a committee. And as part of that committee, we review all the applications that come in and we make a determination for who we think is the best fit for our school. So students like yourself.
Yes,
right?
That is amazing. I attended Explore Middle School myself, and I remember hearing stories originally when I had first attended the school in 6th grade about how how Explore came up from being such a small program, I think coming out of County Prep High School, and then integrated itself into its own building in downtown Jersey City. So I thought that was really cool. Yeah. So speaking of the admissions committee and everything, one of my questions was how many applicants do you often receive each year and how many students are then admitted?
It depends how far back you go. And so if you look at High Tech's overall arc, when I first started with High Tech, I want to say back in 2012, there's probably maybe 600 students. That number grew over the years to as high as maybe 1,200 students. And right now we're somewhere a little over 1,000, close to 1,100 students. And at the time when I first started, the admissions group, because there was I believe even at that time there was a way to pick a first choice and a second choice. I'm not 100% positive on that, but the program, the applications for the programs were huge, and we would get 1,500, 1,600, sometimes 2,000 applicants to come to High Tech High School, and that number has changed over the years. I think there's a lot of factors that go into what has made that number fluctuate. One of the big things I think now, it's 2025. And if you look around the county, a lot of schools took what we were doing and took pieces, I think, of what was successful about it and created their own programs. And so if you think about it, what city are you from?
North Bergen.
So you're from North Bergen. Cities like North Bergen have an opportunity, if they create their own specialty academies within their cities, to keep students like you in their towns. And so back in, 10 years ago, we were kind of the only program for if you wanted to go to a STEM academy, if you wanted to do a performing arts academy, But now, if you look around the county, there's programs like Sea Caucus STEM Academy, there's Jose Marti, there's schools in Hoboken and Weehawken. I think North Bergen is working on something too for their freshmen. So if you look around the county, I think there has been an effort overall to do kind of the things that we are good at doing in order to keep students in district. So I think that's part of it. The second part of it too is we moved from North Bergen, which is it's a hub of the North Hudson area, to Sea Caucus. And, even though we're part of Sea Caucus, we're part of the county, we're kind of tucked away in like a remote area of the county. So I think geography has something to do with it. I also think sports may have played a role. We lost sports at one point, and students who could come here and compete in basketball or softball and couldn't do that anymore. They had an option to stay in district and play with their friends and stay in the school where, they would have teammates that they knew, rather than coming here during the day, doing school, and then traveling back to town and then playing sports. So I think that plays a role in it. I could actually think of one or two people that I know of personally that said, it's High Tech's a great school, but we just wanted our kid wanted to stay in town and just do sports in town and go to high school in town, and that's fine too. So I think those are some of the factors. Our acceptance rates, I don't know. I mean, it really depends on how many applicants we had in a given year, but I would say at the most, I don't know what to call it, the hardest time to get in, our acceptance rates were probably somewhere around that 8 to 10%. And then on certain years, it might be 12 to 15%. But really, we base it by programs of study. So Mr. DePiero, Ms. Cabrera, they have so many computers and so much room in the podcasting studio, so much room in the TV studio. And so if you get 30, 40, 60, 80 applicants, we still can only take in as many students as the teachers can support. And so it really just depends on that. It depends how many good students we feel like are a fit for what we do. So I don't know if that answers your question, but the numbers have been up and down. The application numbers have been up and down. So therefore, the acceptance numbers have been up and down. And I really point to some of the things that the county is doing well, really, to kind of keep students in-house. But I still think we do a great job here. And I think, if anything, what we've been doing a good job of is really looking for students that have an interest in these programs. And that's really what comes through in the application process. So I don't know how much we're going to talk about the actual application process, but that's kind of what excites me. Is I know I have Ms. Franco, Ms. Fargo, Mr. Simon, and all of their CTE teachers who are involved looking at the essays that you write, the portfolios that you submit, the recommendation letters that you have teachers write for you, the guidance counselors that know you well from grammar school, they write about you. And right now, actually pretty soon, we'll be sending out some letters for students that will be accepted. And the thing that we're focusing on this first round of acceptances are what we call our CTE top tier students. So those are students regardless of where their math scores might fall or where their grades might fall, students that really show either an interest or some experience or some passion for this kind of thing. And they can talk about anything. So for example, something like this, they might say, oh, I like Adobe, I like film. Here's an example of my film work. And, that kind of stuff really stands out. And, we look for that in the first round because those are the kinds of students that we want to take. So those students will hear from us fairly soon. And then, we rank students. We rank them on a scale of 1 to 5, and we're very transparent about how that ranking works. It's in all the stuff that we send out. The presentations that we send out, the open house that we do, we say, look, here's how we look at your child's essay portfolio, how we look at their test scores and their grades. So that really becomes the process. And I think we have a really good crop this year. I talked to the supervisors about it, and they feel really good about the kinds of kids who have applied. And I think the biggest thing for me is, and they'll tell you this too, is there's not a lot of experience. I don't know, you tell me. As a 13-year-old, how much of this had you done already? How much filming and interviewing and that kind of stuff? How much of that did you actually do in 8th grade, 7th grade, before you got accepted here?
Yeah, I honestly was worried when I first was constructing my portfolio. I'm not sure if students still have to do that to be accepted into high tech. I remember hearing in Explore that the application process kind of fluctuated each year regarding what they required. I remember at the time for county prep and high tech, we did have to write an essay. And then at least for high tech, it was mandatory that we created a portfolio. And on my portfolio, I included a lot of the personal kind of anecdotes of that followed into my interest in photography and in film. I had only really had experience with photography and with basic editing on my iPhone or even other kind of just like typical editing platforms. I wasn't too familiar with being behind a camera and filming such elaborate things as we do now, and just editing on different platforms like Lightroom and Adobe and everything. So in my portfolio, I included photos taken off my iPhone. I remember that one of the slideshows I included was a photo in its original state, and to which then I edited it and exactly what I did and how that kind of elevated the photo, I thought. And throughout my portfolio, I just made it I included another project that I did in 7th grade for Black History Month for my history class, where we had to take we had to interpret an artist's like piece or a writing or an illustration, something of the sort, something created from someone during the Harlem Renaissance era, to which we then made it into our own of some sort, or like recreated it. And so I can't remember the man's name, but I found a photographer from that Harlem Renaissance era, a photograph of his online in a specific museum, and under that I found the address. And so for my project, I decided to recreate the photo to where Harlem stands now from the 1920s. Maybe the photo was taken. And my mom and I, we took a drive to Harlem one day in February, and I took over 150 photos of the same exact thing. It was like just a reinterpretation, a recreation of what stands now of that exact address that I found. And it was like a pharmacy. It wasn't anything too grand. But then I went through every single one of those 100 photos, and I picked the perfect one that I thought represented the exact moment that the man had originally captured. And I just edited it a little bit and I submitted it, and I made sure to include that in my portfolio because it was something I was really proud of. That was my first time ever going out of my way to create some kind of project of some out of like interpretation of my own. So.
Well, and so if the timeline is right, if that was February of your 7th grade year, yes, because we apply at the very early part of 8th grade. And so like you're a perfect example of you've developed this whole repertoire of skill while you've been here these last 2.5 years. But as a 13-year-old in 7th grade, there's no real experience that mirrors this. Like you weren't podcasting in 7th grade. I think maybe some students have by now because the world has changed and it's become sort of like a real easy platform for people to adopt. But you're a perfect example of potential. You're creative. You're willing to take those risks. You're willing to go out and find the art that you want to see and kind of make it your own art. And so that's what comes through to the people who are looking at portfolios and essay. It's that interest, that passion, that willingness to explore ideas and create. And that's kind of all we're looking for, because it doesn't matter which area that we talk about it. You can compare it to environmental, you compare it to architecture, to culinary, to media and visual arts, to performing arts. It's the same stuff. It's that interest that drives your learning. That's an old Frank Gargiulo line. His name is on the building. He's the old superintendent. But that's the interest drives learning line that is really kind of what we're trying to capture with the applications. And so you clearly had an interest in doing this. And I think as long as that comes through, you become an ideal candidate. And what I don't look for, I say this all the time at like open house and, wherever people are kind of listening to our presentations, everyone who applies, they have like honor rolls and perfect attendance records and straight A's and good test scores and all that stuff that they're applying here with those kinds of, everyone almost is applying here with those kinds of stats already. But that's not what sets you apart. And that's why we ask for essays and portfolios, because it really gives us a glimpse into who you are. And there's always other stuff thrown in there, like what you like to get involved in. Is there like some community service or like some competitions or some awards? And, that kind of creates like a whole picture of the kind of student that you are. And I think that's how we get to know you, and so the stats on a page don't really tell us anything, but when you show us your work, that's like, it's really cool. And our supervisors, our CT teachers, they put comments on the admissions and say, this is a perfect fit, so creative, and like just really passionate about film, or really passionate about art, or really passionate about cooking. I've seen all kinds of stuff in portfolios that just really, they just pop. And, we talked a little bit before off air about gearing up for being a junior and gearing up for college admissions. And I think that's kind of the thing that I would continue making sure is part of your path, is incorporating things and picking schools, and then incorporating things into when you apply to those schools that make you stand out. And, everyone who applies to these schools has good grades, and they've accomplished a lot, but just that little story about how you took something that personally kind of captured your attention, and then you made it into something that only you could have created, right? Because it's part of your artistic vision of what you wanted to see happen. I mean, that's incredibly powerful. Those are the kinds of things that we, just on this small little high school level, love to see from our 8th graders. So I think you should continue that, and you'll do so well with that.
I appreciate that a lot. And to what you were saying before about, I believe you said how the admissions office has begun integrating the CTE teachers into kind of the acceptance process and allowing them to include their kind of area of expertise into who they accept into their field, to see who exactly is dedicated to such as their like academy and different things like that. And what you were saying before about how you have begun to more look at their experience with what they're applying to. May I ask, do you think that in recent years, possibly accepting students who their intellectual abilities and their school performances have set them apart from their expertise in the major that they're applying to, do you think that that has caused a negative effect on possibly who you accept into that major and different things like that? This will be our probably final question.
Final thoughts?
Yes.
So I want to know if I'm interpreting the question right. Are you asking whether or not?
Talk a lot. Sorry.
No, I'm because I'm trying to get a sense of, and we talk about this in circles a lot. Like, what kind of students are we looking for? Are we looking for the best test takers? I would say that's a bonus. That's something that it's a luxury to have. But I think we're a CTE school first, and I think if you have a good head on your shoulders, whether you're not the best math or English student or science student, we'll work with you. But what you can't just create, what you can't just manufacture, is that interest, is that that love of doing the things that we do here. I just got an email this morning about a tech showcase coming up that they're doing in DFAB. I see the pop-up shops all the time. The shows are terrific. I do more than my fair share of sampling the food in culinary. And, those are what happens here, 1, 2, 8, 9, 4, 5, that's really the magic of this school. And that doesn't downplay what our academic teachers do, because they are in their own right. They are magic. They do everything that they're supposed to be doing with bringing students along. But I think it's appropriate to not be the best group of academic students, whether that's in the county, in the state, in the country, if you're a CTE school. I think that's kind of the point. That's the point why we exist. And I say this all the time to people that think otherwise. I don't think of our competitors as being like the top academic schools in the state or the county. That's not what we do. I don't know how many of those schools that focus just on academics have a podcasting studio next to a TV studio, next to the building with a hydroponics lab, or next to the next building with a wood fab lab. That just doesn't happen. Those aren't the students that we're looking for. And, so I would rather take the risk with a student who academically is not as strong as maybe some other places might consider them to be, but have that interest and passion and experience, or are looking for developing that skill, and turn them into something that they can be proud of. And my last thought on this will be, I am a big proponent. My core belief about education is that students do need a basic understanding of English, math, science, and social studies, and we go so far beyond a basic understanding. This teachers here do a great job of advancing studies well beyond what just students need to know. But what I'll say is the most important thing that we do, whether it's here in your studio or anywhere else in any other CTE lab, is that we create for students the skills that are transferable to really do anything. So even if you don't go into film, which I know you want to do, if you don't go into podcasting, if you go into any other field, you'll be able to take with you, right, this skill set that you've learned. So just by coming here, I know you know how to act professionally. I know that you know how to manage your time. I know that you can organize with a group of people and work in a team. And those kinds of things, you can't underestimate the value of that. That's how people operate in the real world. We talk a lot about test scores in college and, whether you're going to perform the right way in academics. And for some people, that's the path. But these other skills that you're picking up, they are invaluable. They're like the most important. Those are the things that people use every day in their lives, whether it's in, their personal lives or professional lives. And so, and further than, even more so than that, because you take risks in these areas, in these CTE areas, so you try a new dish, cooking and culinary, you try a new routine in the arts, or you try something like this, and maybe the show wasn't the greatest show, you learn so much from your failures. You have a great show, you feel great about it, I'm sure. But when you have not so great a show, you reflect on that and you say, what didn't go right? So it's how you respond to when things aren't great that really help you develop and grow as a person as you become an adult. And it really makes you that's how you're formed professionally, is how you learn from your mistakes and your failures more so than your successes. So I think we do a good job of that. I think that's pretty much the backbone of why we're here. And so it's a great show to be on, and I'm glad you gave me an opportunity to talk about it, because I'm a huge believer in CTE, in career technical education, for this very reason, because your show is awesome, and I'm glad I got to be a part of it.
No, absolutely. I really appreciate you coming on the show and giving a more outlet and giving a further perspective for students maybe coming in and are afraid regarding their grades or regarding their experience as to what our high school offers, and to how our high school allows us to build the relationships that we need and the skills that we need to then advance further into our academics and to our further careers. So,
well, you're doing a great job. It's a great show.
Thank you so much for coming on the show.
You're welcome.
I really appreciate it. Thank you for watching, and thank you so much to our panel. I am Isabella Santini, and this is a conversation with on WHIT podcasting. Goodbye.